Sure. My name is Burnie Burns, and I am the Chief Creative Officer of Rooster Teeth Productions.
And what is Rooster Teeth?
Rooster Teeth is an online production company and subscription video service. We've been making online video as long as just about anybody else in the entire world. We've been doing it now for 16 years, since 2003. About 4 years before YouTube, and about 6 years before YouTube was like a big phenomenon, yeah.
My camera guy, Dana, he bit my arm off to come here because he's been watching you since season 2.
Really? Were you like 11? Yeah.
What did you dream of achieving when you first started Rooster Teeth?
Well, I think when you start any project, you have hopes and aspirations for how well you think it will do. And we had worked on a number of different projects trying to break in to the film industry or into web content because it was two groups that kind of came together. All I can say about Red versus Blue is we had some expectations, but it surpassed all of our wildest expectations about a week in. It wasn't an overnight success, but it was really close. By the time we hit the end of the first month, we already had 1 million viewers a week, and there was no way to anticipate that. And then everything we've done since then and how much the community has grown and what they've given back to us, couldn't have predicted any of it.
What point did you realize you created a community?
That's a good question. We were the internet side of the group was basically me and Gus and Jeff, and then the film side was me and Joel and Matt. And the internet side, we were living on forums. So being in internet forums and being part of the community, that was always just something we were really passionate about, something we enjoyed doing. And so it just seemed like a natural extension of having a show is having a place to discuss it and then having other topics because people always want to talk about different things where there's no show airing. And so I think probably the moment I realized that we had a real community is when we had an event at the Lincoln Center in New York. They invited us to this very prestigious theater to show our web series and then debut the first episode of season 2. And we had people showing up from everywhere. We had people that drove all the way from halfway across the United States to get to New York to go to this event. And then we had people flying in from other countries to go to this. And we thought, holy cow, we knew people were watching this all over the world, but we didn't think people would get in a plane and fly to see a show, our web cartoon on a screen. Yeah.
And what point did you realize, what point did you realize that you were having a positive, really positive impact on people?
I think people are very forthcoming, more so now these days, where they will actively tell you it's a very, unfortunately, common thing to hear that people will express how entertainment, any kind of entertainment, has helped them get through difficult times in their life, because everyone goes through those. And so people are very open about that and very upfront about telling you, it's like, oh, I just want to say thanks because this helped me get through a dark time in my life. So even pretty early on, we were getting an indication that, people were being helped by it, even though that wasn't really our intention.
Yeah. And we've done 6 interviews now, and not one person has acted at all surprised when we've brought up that it's to do with mental health. How obvious is the connection for you?
Well, it's gotten more so. So I'm probably in Rooster Teeth, I'm probably, one of the oldest, easily, people in the company. So I come from the generation where people really didn't talk about mental health. I went through myself a period after university where I had severe anxiety attacks, and I didn't know what it was. And I actually ended up going to the emergency room, hospital, and thought I had a heart problem. Went to a cardiologist. I had the whole thing where I had to have a monitor on for 24 hours. They said everything's fine. It's just I really remember this very clearly. They said you probably just have anxiety. So it's America. So here's a medication that'll help you fix that, and that's it. And I remember thinking, oh, it's just anxiety. Well, okay. I remember thinking that it's just anxiety, right? But man, it was something that I really struggled with. But even though I was a person going through it, because it was a mental health crisis, I thought, oh, this isn't real, So I come from that generation. I'm influenced by that. But over the course of the last decade, our ability, at least in the States, to talk about mental health has grown by leaps and bounds, and our younger generation is way more in touch with that. They've grown up and they've been able to discuss these issues and everything, and you can watch them all support one another and help each other. And it's really refreshing to see it. One of our biggest personalities, Barbara, just posted about having a rough night of anxiety, and everyone just was like, nobody said get over it, which is something I would have heard, like, tough up, when I was a kid. But she was getting all the support and all these things like, hey, why don't you go for a run, or why don't you do something you enjoy, or just go hang out with friends. And so it was really great to see all that support pouring in.
Yeah. How big a part is mental health as like the conversation internally at Rooster Teeth?
I would say mental health is a big part of it. A lot of the times we don't work in a coal mine, so we don't really have to worry about physical injuries. But when you're immersing yourselves in a creative endeavor and then putting everything you do online and subjecting yourself to the criticism of the entire world in all different age groups, there is definitely a threat of some kind of essentially mental injury, just because that's tough to navigate, especially for younger people who are just starting out. Even if they have a lot of experience on social media, once they come to Rooster Teeth, those follower counts and friend counts just kind of skyrocket, but that exposes you to lots of people that weren't in your circle before. So you get a lot of people who are more harshly critical. Then also just working in entertainment as a whole, you're constantly putting yourself out there and then constantly being faced with rejection. It's just part of the entertainment industry. It's, whether you're acting or writing or anything, rejection is a big part of the process. But after you deal with that for a long period of time, it really starts to affect one's sense of self and confidence. It can lead to things like anxiety, low self-opinion. So in that sense, we talk about that even internally a lot.
We've touched upon, I think, in a couple of interviews now, this idea of the personalities you present, and not fake personalities, but like exaggerated versions of personality. Has that ever affected like you personally, or are you like as real as you can be?
It hasn't affected me too much, I don't think. My identity was always kind of the boss character, which is just, it's there's not much negative that comes along with that, aside from people thinking, they make jokes about, somebody messed up, Michael messed up, so Burnie's going to fire him. It's to me, I take that really seriously. It's like firing someone's a big deal. You shouldn't just like joke about that. But more so too, I watch out for people that I've known for years. Gavin, for instance, sometimes people get wrapped up in these heightened personalities, and they think it's like okay to carry that out into a real world event. Like there was a thing where Jeff, I think, was playing some kind of game where he would like slap Gavin, and try to catch him off guard and slap him. And then people were like, "Oh, I can't wait to see Gavin at this event so I can slap him." It's like, you're definitely not going to do that. That's not going to happen. That's more of a physical thing. But I do watch out more so for those, younger creatives we have, and help them navigate some of that. Especially FOMO is a big deal. Nobody wants to be left behind or miss out, and that really gets heightened when you're doing creative productions.
In terms of gaming specifically and mental health, what do you find is the connection there?
It's a really good question. The connection between gaming and mental health, I think that gaming is something that you can escape into very easily. So if you're struggling with any kind of mental health issue, it's a very easy thing to go and say, hey, I can immerse myself in this, actually, playing as someone else essentially, and kind of get lost in that. And I think that's what the value of entertainment for people who are struggling is. It just serves as a distraction. There are a lot of people who will say, hey, this helped me, get through dark times. And I'm always very careful to say to those people, it's like, I'm very, proud to hear you say that. It makes me very happy. However, you have to understand, we weren't there when you were going through whatever you were going through. And we were happy to serve as a distraction, but it was your strength that got you through whatever that was. And it's your strength that's going to carry you through all of the conflicts you're going to have for the rest of your life. And you have to identify that in yourself and honor that. And in gaming in particular, I don't know. I think it is something where it's easy to get lost in it, and it's easy to get distracted. I think, though, then that can flip back around where going too deep into that has its own set of problems. You can get lost in those worlds sometimes. Yeah.
And how big a part do you think you, as an organization, has to play in like challenging the perceptions? Because it was a couple of years ago, I think, that the World Health Organization put mental gaming addiction as a mental illness. And do you think there's an overly negative perception of it?
I don't. I'm actually, I think that video games are addictive, and they can be addictive. And I understand why people in the video game industry and in the communities, when they hear things like, video games can be addictive, their knee-jerk reaction is to say, no, they're not. It has nothing to do with the media. But as someone who's played a lot of video games, I've seen myself fall into behaviors that I would identify as being addictive. If you just took a questionnaire on symptoms of alcoholism, a lot of those things, if you applied them to gaming, like, do you do it more than you want to? Are you doing it to escape? Do you do it when you're by yourself? That's obviously one you do in gaming anyway. But I think there's a lot of properties, and I think it's a disservice for people to have the knee-jerk reaction to protect video games, to not realize or to say, yeah, we identify that there are some issues and we need to be able to work on those. I get the feeling that if a lot of people admit that there are downsides, that it hurts video games as a whole, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
And do you recognize your kind of, not responsibility, or what part Rooster Teeth can play in that kind of argument?
Well, as people who have any kind of social media following, I think it's important that if you see something, you kind of call it out. And so when I see that in particular, I will. But also, I feel like our audience, because they're gaming and online, they also tend to skew a little bit younger as well, teenage and early university years. And I think for that audience in particular, it's really important to tell people it's okay to talk about these kinds of issues. They can express themselves. And then we started a documentary series to help. Not everything should be an escape. It's like you can't just get lost in all these entertainment and gaming things. You also have to think about where you are in the real world. So we have our documentary series as a way to educate and elevate our audience as well. Because if we don't do it, who is? Because they're not watching TV anymore. They have school, but we all know how that goes. And we think it's important to be able to talk about things like there are people who will directly tell us whenever we talk about anything, for even political, for instance, like about healthcare in the U.S. They'll say, I don't watch your shows for politics. I watch your shows to escape politics. It's like, I don't know that I want to be that. I don't know that I want to be a place where it's like we pretend like there's nothing wrong in the world. We're also on this moving train with you.
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap up, how important do you think events are for RTX, for both you and your community?
I think live events, are absolutely critical. I think there's a lot to online culture that we haven't identified yet, and I think like pitfalls and trends, things that could adversely affect people. I think gamers and people online, they're early adopters, and they were the first group of people to take, for instance, all their hobbies and put them online, and then take all their friendships and outsource them essentially to the internet. And when you have friends all over the world, that's a little bit different than the way I grew up, where you had someone next to you on the couch and you were playing a video game next to each other. That doesn't happen anymore because that connection now goes via the internet. So live events become very important because they're a way for people to come, and there's like a hunger for it, a need for it now. Live events have exploded in the last few years. Things like live streaming too. I never thought people would show up at a certain time to watch something on the internet. The whole attraction of the internet to me was it's just available whenever you want to watch it. But people want that communal experience. They want to be involved with other people. And I think live events are very important to that. My ex, she understood very little about Rooster Teeth. It wasn't her world at all. But RTX, she understood. She goes, it's just so great to see all these people come together, and they all have a place, you know what I mean? And she thought that was fantastic.
And unless there's anything you want to add specifically on the topic about mental health and what you do or gaming, then I think we're good.
I think we're good. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, great
awesome.
talking to you.
Yeah.